So you guys are going to have a really neat opportunity today to see some elements that are really cool. Now these are elements from the periodic table that you have probably never seen before. In fact, I had never seen these elements until I was an adult. So I think it's really cool that you guys are going to get to actually touch and feel and observe elements like bismuth, magnesium, indium, and your teacher might even have a gallium sample. Gallium's really cool. Now every single one of these elements is really cool for specific reasons. And when you're talking about properties of matter, if you've ever read it before in a textbook, it might have seemed boring. But actually, it's one of the coolest things around because everything is made of matter from elements from the periodic table. And if you like being creative, and if you like making cool artwork and building forts and tree houses and stuff like that, you know what it feels like to want to create cool stuff. Now when you talk about creating the coolest stuff in the whole world, you have to know properties of matter. So what would happen if you used a spaghetti noodle for a nail? You know it would break as soon as you hit it with the hammer. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you have a specific engineering application where you have a specific need, you have to find the best material to build whatever you want to build. I wanted to give you guys something special this lab, and so I figured out how to cast bismuth and indium gummy bears. Do you want to hold it for me? Yeah. Okay, so this metal right here, it's pretty heavy, huh?
This is indium, right?
This is bismuth.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, so this is pure elemental bismuth. And the problem is, small like that, when it's in those small grains like sand, it can get lost and it gets stuck, falls off people's desks. So what I'm doing here is I made some gummy bear molds, and we're gonna heat this up. And I'm going to melt it down till it's a liquid. And this is a high temperature mold material. So when this is really hot, actually it's not that hot. This melts about how hot cookies are. So 320 degrees, you bake cookies in the oven, right? So you could bake this to 320 degrees and it would turn into a pool of molten metal. You guys can look at your gummy bears and figure out the material properties, whether they're electrically conductive. You can look at the color, dig your fingernail in and see how hard or soft they are. But I want you to get to know all these amazing elements like bismuth and indium and magnesium. They are so cool, and I hope you enjoy the lab today.
Here's your bismuth gummy bear. But the coolest thing is if you turn it around, you can see how bismuth crystallizes. So some of these have actually formed some really beautiful crystals. So you can see this cubic nature, and that is how these little atoms link together in a crystal lattice. That's why your bismuth pocket pet is wearing that beautiful crown.
So I have a story about my grandfather, and he was a sailor in World War II, and he sailed on a ship. It was a certain kind of ship called a Liberty ship. They delivered supplies across the oceans to the troops. In fact, the Liberty ships were very important strategically in not losing World War II. The engineers who designed these ships, they designed the steel that they made them out of. They designed the steel so that it was really awesome at warm temperatures. But when the ships started sailing far north on the globe into the northern latitudes, where the water is very, very cold and the air temperatures are freezing, the thing that they had overlooked was the properties of the steel that they had used for the ship did not perform well in cold conditions. And so everything about the material properties that made the steel well suited for the ship all of a sudden didn't work in cold conditions. He told me stories about the day that his ship cracked in half. He was down in the engine room and he heard these horrendous noises, and the alarm sounded and everyone was scurrying around on the ship. And when he opened the engine room door to the outside of the ship and he walked outside, he saw the other half of his ship floating away. So luckily when the ship cracked in half, the ship was actually still floating. Luckily, the whole ship didn't sink. So the rescue came. You probably knew that because if it hadn't come, I wouldn't be here to tell the story. Material properties are important.